All right, what's going on, guys? So today, again, sorry about the mess. Today, I'd like to talk or start the build video for the Trommel, or excuse me, the 1/14 scale portable topsoil screener. So I've already got a few things started. I went ahead and built the most of the chassis. And I just put the things together. If you follow the instructions, they're pretty straightforward as far as all this goes. The only thing you have to pay attention to is the way that some of these go. You can actually have this flipped over. You just want to make sure that the side that's furthest away from any hole, it goes towards the inside of the model, and that's for both side rails as well. So. What we'll do is, I've done quite a few different things. Is I've actually got all the guides on. I didn't use all the holes. I felt like it may have just been a waste of screws. This does just as well. So I only did 4 on some, and essentially I did every other hole. So I also built these the sides or the walls for the drum, and then I built the first set of conveyors, the rear and one of the either the middle or the front. They're both the same, it doesn't matter. And then what I did is I actually remodeled these rails. It doesn't matter which rail you do, the instructions are going to be relatively the same. The only difference is with these is you're not going to have multiple pieces, and with the one-piece rails you're going to have a lot more strength. It bends. You can see it twisting, but the old ones, what would happen is sometimes one side would drop more than the other, and this one you can see it's relatively straight, and the hinge works pretty good. So what we'll do is I'm going to go ahead and continue to build. I'm going to build the next rail, and then when I come back, we'll do the belts together. What I do is I make the belts. I kind of just line it up, make my mark, and then do it off of the conveyor. This one's a lot easier to get on it. You could take this one on and off even when it's on the machine. Well, actually, you have to take off these, but other than that, this is pretty much it. Whole bunch of screws, whole bunch of parts. You may have printed if you print these one-piece rails, pay attention to the rollers. The idle rollers for all the outside rails with these one-piece rails are going to be 82.5 millimeter. The regular ones are 83, and I actually ended up printing all the 83s, and then what I ended up doing is just sanding it down a little bit, and they all fit pretty good now. So one other thing that we want to talk about is you're probably wondering, how the heck do you get the drive roller on when the motor's on? There's no way that you can kind of shimmy it in here. Well, fortunately, there's still a little bit of play in both of these. So what I ended up doing is I actually slightly bent that back and then pressed on my drive drum, and then slid it into the bearing. And again, you got a good amount of not a good amount, but a fair amount of wiggle right here, and that's what we want. And then I'm gonna go ahead and wrap the sandpaper around this while it's on here, just because that's just the way it's gonna go. So I don't think there's anything else. Oh, another thing is, you guys have the option to print your belts, and don't get me wrong, I love the option to be able to print it all and do it all like that. Unfortunately, I just don't think that the printed belts are nearly as good. Unfortunately, there's no tensioner on any of these, and there may be in a future update. I just didn't feel the need for it. I was using these when I first built this. I was using this 1/32, or actually 1/16 excuse me, 1/32 thickness, and I like them. I like the fact that it stretches a little bit, and what that does is it allows me to create tension just with the belt. And what I was able to do is make it all work with these small motors with this thin stuff. With the TPU, it's real slippery. I'm not saying it doesn't work. This upper chute belt works really well, and there is a good amount of tension on this, but this doesn't stretch. So, and then the rear belt works really well as well. I'm not sure why I haven't really had the best of luck with the insides and the outside belts, but I guess just maybe it's my printer, or maybe it's just my preference. But anyways, I like the top chute and the rear belt, and then I also really like the DIY belts for the rest of them. I think it's just a preference. But in the parts list, I will give you guys the measurements for your belts. Essentially, what I was able to do is get a length of the whole piece that we would need, and then I added a 1-inch or 25 millimeter overlap. And there's some controversy as far as the best way to adhere the belts. I have had success with butting the ends up and gluing, adding the glue here and then butting the ends up. I've had really good success with that, and I don't mind doing that in the conveyors because the belts are just so easily accessible. On this particular model, or this machine, the inside belts, you have to take apart the whole machine just to get to them. So I want these to be as reliable as possible, and with this 1-inch overlap, I haven't had any failures whatsoever. And gluing the seam together with CA glue, I have had not failures, but I've had rips and separations and things like that, and I know eventually it's going to fail. So I don't want to use that method for this. I'm just going to continue to use this overlap, and it's flexible enough to wrap around all the drums and not cause too much harm. So we'll go ahead and get to building the rest of the rails, and then we'll kind of go with the instructions, because that's where it kind of starts to get a little bit difficult. Getting the rails together and then doing most of the bigger things like the chassis and things like that, those are relatively easy. And then I also kind of partly built the box, and then got some of the electronics installed for the insert. So we'll get to that here later on in one of the part videos, but this one is just more so of an introductory and just kind of going over most of the themes here. I guess there's another thing we could talk about. So another issue is a lot of us have been having issues finding the motors that I had in the parts list, or finding the right ones. I know in certain countries you don't have access to the motors that I have access to, or others have access to, which is fine. I can model these pretty much any way that anybody needs. But in the files, there's a model for this for a 10 millimeter mounting holes, and that's the distance between these two holes here. Hopefully you can see the distance between these two holes here is going to be 10 mil. When I first originally modeled this, I actually had ones that were 11 millimeters from each other. So there was two different versions in there. There's a 10 mil and then there's an 11 mil. If you find a different version, let me know. I had a gentleman, I believe he was from, I think it was from France or Italy. He was not able to get these, the 10 mil. We just couldn't find them on anything for some weird reason. So what we were able to find was the same motor with a slightly different gearbox. It doesn't have this huge, this I guess you would call it a housing or a build out for. There's a bushing in here, But on his, it's all brass, this whole thing, instead of this cast steel or aluminum. It was all brass, and he didn't have that. It was actually, and the holes were a lot closer. They're 9 mil apart. So I remodeled the pieces for him, and again, I can do it for just about any motor, reasonable motor, as long as it's relatively close to the same size. We can make that work. So you just have to let me know. I'm willing to help and do whatever we can to make it work for you. I really enjoy this model, and I want others to enjoy it as well. So that's these motors, excuse me. And then I think that's really it. Yeah, everything else is pretty straightforward. We'll go through it during the build video, and then we'll talk more in depth on some of the more controversial things. I know some people were having issues with this particular piece here. They couldn't figure out how the drive roller gets mounted in here, and for good reason. This hole is actually supposed to be countersunk. And I know it's really close to this hole over here, but when you get a 3 mil countersunk screw in here, it actually just touches that and allows this the mount to still get installed here. So again, when we get to this part, we'll go ahead and explain more in depth on how to get over this hiccup and continue the build. Other than that, let's go ahead and get started and get to it.